Hey, there we go. My computer says we have gone live, and I see that I have plenty of you waiting here and more to jump in. I'm so glad to have our midweek with Dr. C in process right now. You all have sent me lots of good questions, and you know that I love them. By the way, if I'm giving folks just a couple of minutes just to get on here, if you're new to our format, one of the things that we do is I will take questions that you send me throughout the week, and then that's what we're going to be going on this week. These are questions that came in last week. When we finish the video, the live feed, we're going to have a just like we have on our regular videos. Then it will be available to be seen on tape, and below that in the comments section are going to be the opportunity for you to go ahead and ask your questions. In fact, if you want to go ahead and put some questions in right now in our chat feed on the side, you can do that as well. And I'll go back through and I pick up on the questions. I do the copy and paste kind of thing, and then I've got them right here in front of me. And I have so many of them that you all send in, and I so appreciate it. By the way, I noticed in our little chat side thing on the side, you all are encouraging each other with your travel. And Rory's been to France, and I see some people from Oregon and all these other wonderful places. So it's just so good that we have this large community where we can be encouraging to one another. Now, today, so many of the questions imply that you have such a delicate nature in this. Many of you have such a delicate nature in the sense that you have such a desire to be caring and loving and encouraging, even with the narcissistic individuals in your life, and then they don't give you good reactions. The question is, what do we do with all of these? Well, we're going to get in the weeds and figure it out. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in with our very first question here today, and we're going to build on this. Okay. So the first question, and okay, I want to put this out there front and center. First question asked: is an empath someone who allows the narcissist to be in control? Now, the answer to that question is an emphatic no. Uh, I empaths can be so misunderstood. I so appreciate people who like to identify themselves in this regard. When we talk about an empath, we're not talking about namby-pamby. We're not talking about someone who's everyone's doormat that says, here's my face, go ahead and slap on it because I'll let you get away with it. That's not what we're talking about when we refer to an empath. An empath, and obviously the word is a derivative of the word empathy. An empath is someone who makes the effort to know people from their own vantage point. And they like to know someone else's backstory. They like to figure out their why and who they are and how they got to the place that they are. And as a result, empaths have a reputation and an inclination towards goodness and helpfulness and kindness and all that goes with that. It's a wonderful characteristic to have because it has such a rich element to it that goes in so many different directions. Now, it just so happens that there are times when people may be inclined towards that more soft and caring and tender kind of mannerism that the narcissist is going to be thinking, okay, I think I can work with this. You're over there, you're wanting to be friendly and kind, and you're not the overbearing, pushy, forceful, bossy kind of person, but I am. And now this is all on very much on a subconscious level. Sometimes it's not. And narcissists are seeking supply. They're looking for someone that they can count on to give them the affirmation. And empaths are very willing to give people the benefit of the doubt and to offer affirmation. And so, unfortunately, narcissists pick up on your very best characteristics, and they think, okay, let me see if I can use this to my advantage. So, is an empath someone who allows narcissists to be in control? No. Empaths sometimes may be very appealing because they're appealing to everybody. And narcissists can think of that as somebody that they can devour. And so the primary thing that I encourage with people who have a strong empathetic nature is to make sure that along with that willingness to show understanding and kindness and encouragement and nurturing, that you also have your sense of assertiveness and you have a good understanding of boundaries. Boundaries means that you define for yourself who you're going to be, and you don't let everybody else define that for you. And so you live inside your boundaries. Sometimes because empaths are so intent on giving care that they may be a little reluctant to say, no, this is not, I can't go along with that, or this is not something I'm going to agree with. And so that's something you need to work on. But being an empath means that does not mean that you just have to be a doormat. So let's just make sure that we look at this in a very balanced kind of way. If you're an empath, we need to get a gold star for you to wear, because I just think that's a right way to be and to think. Okay. All right. Here's another question. This person is referring to apparently it was the person she lived with. I don't know if she's living with him or not yet. We'll see. The question is, one thing that he used to do was to repeat what I was saying. And then she gives an example. She says, me, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells and can't really be myself around you. Any of you ever done that or said that? He would then say, no, I'm the one walking on eggshells. You're so sensitive. Or then she gives another illustration. She says, he'll say that he doesn't have time to talk with me, but then he'll spend an hour on Facebook. So I would confront him about it. And then he would say, I'm stalking him. And then the question is, well, then she says, it gives me a dizzy feeling and a lot of anxiety. Are these ways of gaslighting the target, in this case, her? Is the feeling of being out of balance or out of touch with normalcy an effect that you might want to watch for in a case like this? And the answer to that part is, oh yeah, this is gaslighting deluxe. See, let's keep in mind that narcissists, it's like they're thinking my opinions, my feelings, my perceptions are the only ones that matter, and yours don't. And so if you come along and say that you're walking on eggshells, it's like, I don't like hearing that. So the narcissist will just flip it around and say, no, you got that wrong. You're not the one walking on eggshells. I am. If you then say, well, I'd like to have more quality time with you, and they're over there saying, well, I'm busy. They're on Facebook just looking at people who are posting selfies or whatever. And you're thinking, wait a minute, you're just giving me the brush off. But then they can look at you and say, whew, you got problems, don't you? You're just stalking me. That's all classic gaslighting. Gaslighting means that they want to keep you in a state of confusion so that their opinion, their perception, their pronouncement is the only one that's left. Because whatever you say, it's invalid. You're invalid. Whatever you feel, it's irrational. You're irrational. Of course, I'm the rational one. And so I'm hoping that as you learn these kinds of terms, like gaslighting and empath and all, you can realize these are terms that are there as descriptors to let you know there are certain patterns that people get into. And she asked, am I out of balance in thinking this? And the answer is no, you're not out of balance at all. He wants you to think that you're out of balance. And then when you go into this anxiety, you're giving way too much credibility to the person who wants to keep you dysregulated. And so, one of the things that I'm hoping that each of you who are watching and participating in this can commit to, and that is learn to trust your gut. In fact, one of the videos I put, probably over a year ago now, it's your superpower when you deal with a narcissist is that you learn to trust in yourself. And as you learn to trust in your intentions and your convictions, your mannerisms, and the narcissist comes along and says, "Well, I think you're all wet." It's like, no, yes, you think that, but no, I'm not that. I know me, and I trust what my intentions are, and your interpretation is not correct. And so let's keep in mind that they have a vested interest in lowering you and keeping you in the inadequate position. And I'm hoping your response to all of that can be, no, sorry, I'm on to you. I'm not messing with you in that regard. That's gaslighting, and I'm not going to buy into that. All right. This is from a guy who, the next question, who asked the question, should I say that I feel hurt? And then she despises me for being a weak man. Or should I just brush it off and pretend that I'm fine? So here you have a man, and he's one of these kind of men that says, well, I want to talk to you about my emotions, and I want to talk with you about my perceptions. All right, pause right there. Sometimes my half of the species, us males, we get the rap, and many times understandably so, that we're not very tuned into the emotional dimension. So you have a fella right here that says, well, I want to be tuned in, and if I feel something, I'd like to talk about it. And if there's something that creates a hurt or a an awkward feeling, you want to put it out there. And then lo and behold, instead of that other person, that in this female in your life, saying, I so appreciate you putting this out there, let's talk. And as simple as that sounds, a high percentage of people just can't go into that kind of space. But she can't say that. So she'll say, well, you're just a weakling. Okay. So something happens and you feel hurt, and you say something to that effect. Does that immediately make you a weakling? Now, if this is chronic and if it's ongoing, and you're constantly talking about how you're the victim, okay, then that person might have an argument there. But I don't get the sense that that's what we're talking about here. If you simply have something that you need to process and you say, I feel hurt, and then that other person comes along and says, well, you're just not a man at all. I'm thinking, well, real men are in touch with their feelings. Then he says, should I just brush it off and pretend like I'm fine? I'm going to kind of lean in the direction of yes, but when I say kind of, I don't mean for it to be phony baloney. I do think, though, that before you share your needs or your feelings or your perceptions with someone, you have to discern and assess, is this someone who knows what to do with my self disclosures? And there's some people that they're very safe and they can enter into that space with you. In this case, as soon as you say something and it gets stepped all over, it's like, okay, note to self, this person's not safe. They don't know what to do with my self disclosure. And it's not a matter of do you just completely go into a pretense mode. And that's where my hesitancy comes in. I don't want to be a pretender. I just want to save my self disclosures and my discussions for people that know what to do with me. And so there are some individuals that you're just not going to have on your inner circle. You'd like to think if this person is his wife or a close family member, that that would be someone that would fit into that personal space with you. But if that's the case, it's like, okay, with this individual, given their history of not being safe, I won't go into that as much as necessary. Now, that doesn't mean you can't assert and express your boundaries. But in terms of discussing the why part, there's some people that you might as well just go bang your head against a brick wall because they're not going to go into that space with you. Okay. Another interesting question, and this is about introversion, extroversion. This person asked the question, is someone who is high on the introverted end of the spectrum more likely to suffer in a relationship with a narcissist? In other words, do introverts have more pain than extroverts because of their exposure to narcissists? And my response is no, not necessarily. I'm not saying that you don't have pain or suffering, because obviously you do. Uh, Introverts and extroverts may process their emotions differently, but just the fact that you are an introvert doesn't mean that your pain is worse, or if you're an extrovert, your pain is more egregious. Pain is pain. It's kind of like asking if you break your leg, are introverts going to be more likely to have pain than an extrovert? It's like, well, you got a broken leg. It hurts both of you. And narcissists are equal opportunity insulters. They'll insult anyone, and or they can be difficult with introverts and extroverts. And are you familiar with the term ambivert? That is people that kind of have both of them, like ambidextrous, ambivert. And so you do have pain, but let's just say sometimes we process our pain more fully. The extrovert may shout, ouch, figuratively, more prominently. The introvert may think, I can't afford to say anything. And so they may hold it, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to quantify the amount of pain. By the way, one of my favorite books in the psychological realm, it was written several years ago by a woman named Susan Cain. She's an attorney, and it's all about introversion. It's called Quiet. And then it's being an introvert in a world that won't stop talking. And she does describe how introverts do, in fact, process things differently, and they communicate their feelings and needs in a different kind of way than the extroverts. And so I find that to be it's a very well written book and a fascinating discussion about introversion. So let's just say, is your pain worse or not as bad? Let's just say it's different. Okay. And we're just going to leave it at that. Narcissist, whether you're whichever, they hurt. Okay. This is another question, this next one that I receive very commonly. In fact, this may be one of the most common kind of questions that I get. This is obviously in a divorce setting. And it's the mom who's asking the question. She says, my kid's dad is a narcissist and I'm an empath. How do you explain these kinds of behaviors and situations to your kids? So you have a mother who is an empath. She is one of these people that likes to go into her feelings and their feelings, and let's talk about it, let's share. And then apparently dad is one of these more blustery, narcissistic individuals. It's like, just do what I tell you to do. And, boys don't cry, or knock it off, or quit it. And just doesn't know what to do when the emotional and sensitive dimension comes along. And so here you have this empathetic mother that says, what do I say to the kids when I know that they're struggling because of dad's mannerisms? Well, on one hand, you do want to acknowledge the fact that they feel as they do with dad. Okay, now we want to be extremely delicate with that one, though. I'm sure many of you have heard the term parental alienation syndrome. Parental alienation is when you make and take an initiative to alienate the children against the other parent, and especially if they don't really need to be alienated. And so it can be a smear campaign, basically, where you teach the kids to have the same kind of disdain for that other person as you do. We don't need to do that, obviously. Narcissists, they do it left and right, and it's a very egregious kind of pattern. And so when your kids are struggling because they can't engage well with dad because he steps all over their emotions, what you can do is you can acknowledge, I know that that's something that you wish could be different, and I know that there are feelings or perceptions or discussions that you'd like to have out there with your dad, and I know it doesn't always work out well. Okay, acknowledge the obvious. But then instead of saying, well, your dad was a jerk when I was married to him, and he's always going to be a jerk, and now you get to, you don't want to go into that kind of space. Instead, what you do is you bring the discussion back to your relationship with those kids. And so as the mother, you can say, I know that there's that over there, and frankly, I can't and you can't force somebody to be any different than what they are, but why don't we agree to this? When you are with me and the time that we have with each other, and if there's a need, if there's a feeling, if there's a preference or a misunderstanding, why don't we agree that that's something that in our relationship we put a high premium on discussing that in as clean and objective way as we can? Would you be willing to do that with me? Because I'm hearing that's what you're wanting. And so you put it out there and you put it on yourself. And what you're basically saying to those kids is, I willingly take on the role of the model for you. I'll model what healthy living looks like. And ultimately, it's an honor for you to at least be in that position so that you can show them what goodness is all about. So turn it into a discussion about how we're going to do it. Even as you acknowledge that they have some things with the other parent that they don't like, and if they say, "But what do I do when Dad yells?" Well, then what I'll do is I may turn it around to them. This is the way therapists think, and I may say, "Well, let's figure out what options you have at a time like that." And we'll put them down out loud. You have option A, B, and C. You can always scream. You can always argue. You can do this. You can do that. You can figure out what your boundaries are going to be. And get them into the practice of thinking through their emotions. And then, frankly, if they need a therapist that can help them work it out, then if it's possible, then you would want to do that, or someone in a youth organization or coach or someone like that that can help them sift it through so that you're not the only one speaking into that space. I think that would be good as well. Okay. But that's an extremely common scenario that we get. All right, now this next one, and this is somebody that, speaking of empathy, here's somebody that has an obvious pain that they experience because of someone else's maladaptive relationship. And so here's where it goes. This person asked, could you speak sometime about, so I'm doing it right now, about what to do with the deep sadness that comes from watching friends and family members suffer in a narcissistic relationship, despite your efforts to point out the abuse and help them love themselves enough to walk away from it. And then she goes on to say, what do I do with my deep sadness and feelings of helplessness that come from witnessing this? I love them so much and want them to be free, but maybe I'm getting sick from second-handed narcissistic abuse. And actually, there can be some truth to that. It's kind of like, the person over there that's smoking and you're getting the secondhand smoke. It is possible. How do I say this correctly? I was going to say it's possible to care too much. What I mean is, you can't care more about a person's position in life than they care about their position in life. In other words, you can't jump in and be a hero to someone who doesn't feel like they need to be rescued. One huge thought is, and I'm wondering if this is a sister who has a bad situation, if this is an adult son or daughter or a niece or nephew, someone like that. Remind yourself that we're all at different stages of readiness when it comes to coming to terms with our difficult relationships. And if you have already been through quite a bit of struggle or pain or growth or learning yourself, then you look over at someone else and say, well, they're experiencing some of what I've experienced, and you want them to have the same measure of readiness as you have. And sometimes they're just not in that space. I recall so well a lady who knew that her sister at age 25 or thereabouts was in a bad situation and needed to get out of it. And at age 25, she was too starry-eyed or working too much on getting her career going and other kind of things to deal with it. And it was roughly 15 or 20 years later that sister came to her and said, this is just not working. Now, this older sister was thinking, I knew this a long time ago, and I tried to throw out my hands and say this and say that, but you just weren't at the place. And later on, with a whole different set of circumstances, that younger sister said, okay, finally, I'm ready to do something. Would you be there? And so in your care, you can't force the timing of someone else's adjustments. What you can do is you can more or less establish the pattern that says, whenever that time does come in your life, I'm here. And so I don't think that you need to be completely silent, but you don't need to try to force somebody to see something that they're just not ready to see. Now, obviously, it's a little different if there's extreme abuse, like physical violence and gross verbal violence and things like that, or harsh financial abuse, like, deep IRS problems and all like that, and you need to speak into it, then go ahead and do that. But even so, there are times when the other person can say, I'm not ready. I know you want me to do something. And so you establish yourself as being the safe harbor. You keep your tabs with that individual. That's part of your love. Even your hurt on behalf of that person is part of your love. Keep loving. And then as they can finally draw their own conclusions, then you're ready and you're available. And hopefully, like this person that I just mentioned, 15 to 20 years later, they'll think, I'm so glad you've been there by my side the whole time. If that's at all possible, then you want to be that kind of person. Okay. And I so appreciate when I receive questions like that, because it lets me know that there are people like yourself who are committed to the way of love. And I know sometimes it hurts when others can't really go into that space with you, but nonetheless, stay committed to it anyway. All right, here's another question. And this goes into the phony baloney thing that narcissists can get into. This person asked the question, can a narcissist act outwardly like an empath on social media, etc., but on a personal relationship be completely narcissistic? And the answer is, oh, yes, in all caps. Oh, yes. In fact, that's extremely common. Narcissists are all about their public persona. Now, behind the scenes, they have tons of conflict. When you begin thinking, okay, here you have this individual who's decided, yeah, being controlling over other individuals, that's a good thing. And being manipulative and insensitive and entitled and self-centered, all of those things are fine. I can do that. But then when they're out there in public, they try to present themselves as the opposite of all of that, like I'm the friendliest person and most helpful person you've ever met. These individuals are so conflicted on the inside of themselves, they don't even see the absurdity of their inconsistencies and their mixed messages that they send, because somehow or another they have an excuse and rationalization for all of it. And so they're constantly attempting to build and then live behind a false self. It doesn't mean that they have to be nice, they just have to look nice. It doesn't mean that they have to be loving, but they want to give the appearance that they know what that's all about too. And it's all about appearance, and it's all about deception and being fake. And then when you say, why don't we bring that mask and that shield down, it scares them to death. They can't be vulnerable. Vulnerable is something that's like, ooh, no. In fact, I remember years ago, a man who'd been to counseling and all, he said, you know what my least favorite word is in pop psychology? It's vulnerability. You have to make yourself vulnerable. He said, I don't do that to anyone. Fine, good to know. But that's how they think. And so just know, on the outside, they may portray one thing. Behind the scenes, it can be a whole different ball game. And guess which one is the more accurate? Okay. All right. Here's another of a similar nature. How can I show love to a narcissist when the relationship has reverted to a venomous manner, and we live at a distance that keeps me from sharing my time, and I cannot afford to help them financially? So apparently, this is somebody that must be either a friend or an extended family member. How do I show love when that person is venomous? And again, I have this notion that says I love not because you've made yourself lovable. I respect not because you've necessarily made yourself respectable. I love, I respect, I'm good simply because it's in me to do so. And it doesn't require the other person to reciprocate. Now, in this person's case, what this individual is saying, I so wish that they would pick up on this love and this goodness that I have to offer, but they remain in their venomous position. How do I love knowing that that's just where they are? And the answer is, well, you still love kindness and goodness, and you have good wishes. But in many cases, you have to do it with a great sense of distance. Sometimes the best you can do is to know that if that person would reciprocate, that you would be more than happy to engage with helpful kind of things. But then other times you have to know I'm available to be that person, but I'm just going to have to wait and know that it's not going to be initiated simply because they don't know what to do with it. It's kind of like if you have $10,000 and it's like, I'd love to be able to give away this $10,000. And then you know that the person you're giving it to is going to think, oh, I can do this in all sorts of ways. I can use this money in all sorts of wasteful ways. Watch this. It's like, well, then I'm not going to give you that $10,000. And in the same way, I have much love to offer. But if you're going to waste it and take it in a really, really way off base direction, then I'm going to pull back, and I have it to offer, but I just can't share it in such a way that it's going to be trampled on. And that's part of your boundaries that you want to maintain. Good for you that you want to be that kind of person. It's unfortunate for that other individual to know they don't even know what they are missing. That's the hard part. Okay, another question we have here is, oh gee, and this is another one of these false self kind of things. Why do narcissists continue to insist that they did not, emphasis on that, do one of their awful things, even when and even though there are witnesses and written proof? So you say, hey, you did such and such over here, and that wasn't a smart thing to do. And they say, I didn't do that. And you say, well, is that your signature right there? Or these other four people saw the same thing, and then it's still, I did not do that. And then she goes on to say, why do they put you down and blame you for what they did? In other words, why do they deny actual reality? I don't see any logic or love in these things. And my response to that is, right, they are illogical. And in fact, I have, I think I just put it up. I have several in the can. A narcissist commitment to alternate reality. And why do they do that? And then how do they do that? Narcissists are afraid of truth. You see, in their mind, they think that because they declare something to be factual, they declare something to be true. End of discussion. If they say, well, I'm a very helpful person, and you're thinking, you've sabotaged me so many times I can't even count. It's like, no, I'm being helpful. And when you say that's not the case, it's like, yes, it is. It's no longer about truth or fiction. It's all about, you're just watching a person go into high protection mode. What they're saying is, I can't receive input that might hint that I'm not perfect and that I'm not ideal. And part of narcissism is they have an over idealized notion of who they are, which is why they have to repeatedly step into that space of alternate reality rather than saying, well, maybe I'm not ideal. Like, ooh, that scares me to death. They'll just say, no, you got your facts wrong. And it's all about their fears. It's all about their compensation for their sense of inadequacy. Let's keep in mind that they are driven by a heavy and deeply embedded insecurity. And that's the foundation for their alternate reality, because they can't say, I'm deeply insecure. And so until they can come to terms with that, you're going to get this, I did not do that, over and over and over. Okay, I've got a little segment here of 3 questions, but they all kind of run together. So let me run through these, and then we're going to wrap for today. One person asked, does a narcissist have to constantly be around people for attention? Are they the types who are constantly looking for a new group or a new club and can't really be alone, or say that they're in need? That's one question. The next question, Dr. C, please address the narcissist who likes to toy with people by being abusive, then loving, like exhausting a fish on the hook that's trying to fight it. Okay. And then the next question, why does a narcissist hoover and then turn nasty the next day? And then she says, or he says, FYI, I fell for the hoover. You know what hoovering is? It's like the Hoover vacuum cleaner. They suck you back in. These three questions are all under the category of the seeking of narcissistic supply. Narcissists are addicts. They're constantly thinking, who out there is going to give me my affirmation fix today? Just like a heroin addict that's looking for heroin supply. And so, are they the types that go to new groups thinking, well, maybe you'll give me that admiration? Yes. Are they the kind of people that like to toy by being abusive and then turning around and being really nice and sweet? And it's like, that abusive stuff you're talking about, that wasn't abuse. Look how nice I am. Yes, they'll do that. Are they the kind that will hoover you back in and say, and there's another term that we also have called breadcrumbing. They'll give you little morsels of friendliness to bring you back in. Yes, it's all about them saying, I see you as somebody who can supply my need. I'm a affirmation junkie. And as long as I think that there's a possibility that I can somehow or another manipulate you, I'll figure it out and I'll do it. And so they can't come to terms with how they're treating you and the gross insensitivities. All they're thinking is, you exist to meet my needs, and in whatever form that I can get that to happen, I'll keep doing it. Which then leads us to our word that we just keep going to over and over and over, and it's the word boundaries. I've got that course. This is me. It's all about setting your boundaries and just knowing who you are, and then not letting that narcissist so get inside your head that they put their garbled illogic inside of you. You want to have a very strong sense that says, I know who I am. And if you over there, Mr. and Mrs. Narcissist, want to rearrange my thoughts about what good living looks like, nope. You're not the keeper of truth for me. I know what my truth is. I know what my character is. I'm going to stand on that. All right, I'm leaving some on the table. You all send so many good questions. Again, if you have questions, put them underneath the video when it's loaded back up in the comments section. I actually look at every single one of them. I'm not able to respond to every one of them, but please put them down there, and if possible, I'll get to your question next week. I love knowing where you're from, and I'm so pleased that you allow me to be a part of your journey with you. And I want you to stay strong. We're here on Team Healthy, and we're here to encourage each other and prompt one another towards being a better world. Let's be that individually and collectively. Okay. Well, I shall see you guys same time next week. You people down in Australia who are watching us at 3 o'clock in the morning, go get some sleep. Okay. And for the rest of you, I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here with me. Bye.